At least we're at a minimum very, very close, and I think we're beyond very close.
U.S. President Donald Trump said on Monday that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had agreed to back a U.S.-sponsored Gaza peace deal. The agreement includes a ceasefire of the two-year-old war in Gaza and the release of hostages held by Hamas.
If accepted by Hamas, this proposal calls for the release of all remaining hostages immediately, but in no case more than 72 hours.
An official with Hamas said after the announcement that it has not received the written plan.
I support your plan to end the war in Gaza, which achieves our war aims. It will bring back to Israel all our hostages, dismantle Hamas's military capabilities, end its political rule, and ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel.
Netanyahu made his fourth visit to the White House since Trump returned to office in January. The right-wing Israeli leader was looking to shore up his country's most important relationship after a slew of Western leaders formally embraced Palestinian statehood last week in defiance of the U.S. and Israel. Trump, who sharply criticized the moves as a prize for Hamas, was seeking Netanyahu's agreement despite Israel's misgivings on parts of the plan. Washington presented its peace plan to Arab and Muslim states on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly last week. Trump's 20-point plan includes a staged Israeli withdrawal from the Palestinian enclave, Hamas disarmament, and a transition government led by an international body headed by Trump. The White House talks came as Israeli tanks on Monday thrust deeper into the heart of Gaza City. Israel has launched one of its biggest offensives of the war this month, with Netanyahu saying he aims to wipe out Hamas in its final redoubts. The war has left much of Gaza in ruins and caused a major humanitarian crisis.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer delivered a keynote address at Labour's annual conference in Liverpool, appealing to working-class voters and pledging to defend diversity. In a pointed challenge to Nigel Farage's Reform Party, Starmer framed patriotism as unity, promising national renewal through economic growth, public service reform, and shared pride.
And yes, they want secure borders, and that is a reasonable demand. Now, we should always say plainly and with pride that asylum for people genuinely fleeing persecution is the mark of... If you say or imply that people cannot be English or British because of the colour of their skin, that mixed heritage families owe you an explanation, that people who've lived here for generations, raised their children here, built their lives here, working in our schools, our hospitals, running businesses, are our neighbours. If you say they should now be deported, then mark my words, we will fight you with everything we have, because you are the enemy of national renewal. Because for me, patriotism is about love and pride, about serving an interest that is more than yourself, a common good. And the question I ask seriously of Nigel Farage and Reform is, do they love our country? Do they want to serve our country, all of it, our beautiful, tolerant, diverse country, every region, nation and city? Or do they just want to stir the pot of division because that works in their interests? I will fight with every breath I have, fight for working people, fight for the tolerant, decent, respectful Britain that I know. People say, Conference, that a nation like ours can't be a community, that it's too diverse, too divided. I reject that. That goes against everything I stand for, everything I've served, everything I understand about this great country that I love. So no matter how many people tell me that it can't be done, I believe Britain can come together, that we can pursue a shared destination, that we can unite around a common good. That is my ambition, the purpose of this government. End decline, reform our public services, grow our economy from the grassroots, and with resolve, with respect, with the flag in our hands, we will renew this country until we can say with total conviction that Britain is built for all.
Palestinians were disappointed about US President Donald Trump's plan for Gaza. Earlier today, Trump secured Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's backing on Monday for a US-sponsored peace proposal to end a nearly two-year-old war in Gaza. But questions loomed over whether Hamas would accept the plan. Speaking at a joint White House press conference following a meeting with Netanyahu, Trump said they were beyond very close to an elusive peace deal for the Palestinian enclave. But he warned the Islamist group Hamas that Israel would have full US support to take whatever action it deemed necessary if the militants reject what he has offered. The White House released a 20-point document that called for an immediate ceasefire, an exchange of hostages held by Hamas for Palestinian prisoners held by Israel, a staged Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, Hamas disarmament, and a transitional government led by an international body. It was not immediately clear whether the Trump administration and Israel had resolved all their differences, including over the possibility of a future Palestinian state, which Netanyahu has forcefully rejected, and any role for the Palestinian Authority in post-war governance of the enclave.
يعني الشعب الفلسطيني لن يقبل انتداب جديد، لن يقبل أن يتنازل عن حقوقه ولن يتنازل عن قانون الدولي. نرفض هذه
يعني أنا قبل اجتماع ترامب ونتنياهو أنا أستغرب أنه حتى الآن أكثر من 150 دولة اعترفت بالحق الفلسطيني، بحق الوجود الفلسطيني، ومع ذلك للأسف اجتماع الأمس لم يتم التطرق إلى القضية الفلسطينية بتاتا. أصبحنا بعيدين عما يجري، يعني تحكي على 24 شهر من القتل، من التدمير، من التشريد، وحتى الآن ترامب والنتنياهو طبعا نايمين في ثبات.
هلا الخطة اللي امبارح اللي هي حكوها امبارح هذه إلغاء الدولة الفلسطينية اللي اعترفوا بها كل الدول، وهذا استعمار جديد بمنهج جديد، والغاء اللي هي عاصمة فلسطين القدس وكل البنود التحرير فلسطين، وهذا لغوها امبارح، وهذا استعمار جديد بالنسبة له.
الناس ما بتستنى بخطة ترامب، الناس تستنى بأنه رب العالمين يتدخل يغير الحال من حال إلى حال أحسن. الناس بدها حرية، بدها عايشة على كرامة، مش عايشة على قوت الدعم المالي أو الجسدي اللي بيقدمه ترامب، واللي أصغر من ترامب واللي أعلى من ترامب. هو ما في أعلى من ترامب إلا رب العالمين بالنسبة على سطح الأرض. الناس ما بدها أوهام، ما بدها حبر على ورق، الناس بدها أفعال على أرض الواقع. والله أنا بدي أقدم لك مساعدة بالحديث، طب وين على أرض الواقع؟ لا يوجد شيء.
Around 500,000 Palestinians remain trapped in Gaza City within an area of just 8 square kilometers, amid intensified Israeli attacks aimed at occupying the city and displacing its residents. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, said Monday, Anadolu reports. In Gaza City, around 500,000 Palestinians remain trapped in an area of less than 8 square kilometers. UNRWA spokesman Adnan Abu Hasna said in remarks republished by the agency on the US social media company X. Around 70,000 people will be crammed into each square kilometre. There's no space for a single tent. Tens of thousands of families are left without shelter on the streets. Gaza City covers 74.6 square kilometres. Israel currently controls most of it and is gradually expanding its grip under a plan announced by the government in August to occupy the entire city. The UNRWA spokesman warned that famine has followed displaced families from Gaza City to central and southern areas. He stressed the urgent need for an immediate ceasefire and unrestricted delivery of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Since March 2nd, Israel has fully closed Gaza's crossings, blocking food and aid convoys and deepening famine conditions in the enclave. Only limited supplies are sporadically allowed in, and many are looted by armed groups that Gaza authorities accuse Israel of protecting. The Israeli army has killed over 66,000 Palestinians, most of them women and children, in Gaza since October 2023. The relentless bombardment has rendered the enclave uninhabitable and led to starvation and the spread of diseases.
Flight tracking data shows Turkish drones circling an international aid flotilla heading for Gaza. Turkey has joined Spain, Italy and Greece in monitoring the flotilla, which was sailing east across the Mediterranean Sea on Monday, despite warnings from Israel to stop the mission. The global Samud flotilla is carrying parliamentarians, lawyers and activists, including Swedish climate campaigner Greta Thunberg. They have vowed to breach an Israeli naval blockade around the embattled Gaza Strip, where famine has taken hold in some parts, according to a global hunger monitor. 3 long-endurance drones originating from a Turkish airbase have been circling over the flotilla for 3 days. Reuters was unable to confirm the reason for the drone flights. Turkey's Foreign and Defence Ministries and Intelligence Agency did not respond to requests for comment. The flotilla was still hundreds of miles off the Gaza coastline on Monday, but it was approaching an area where other flotillas have previously been intercepted, people on board said. Last week, a drone attack damaged some of its boats off Greece. Earlier in the month, other drone strikes were reported while some boats were docked in Tunisia. Israel did not comment, but it has previously said it will use any means to prevent the flotilla from reaching Gaza. It argues that its naval blockade is legal, as it battles Hamas militants in the coastal enclave. Italy and Spain have deployed Navy ships to accompany the flotilla in case of rescue or humanitarian needs, but they've said they will not engage militarily.
Iran has executed a man it described as one of the most important spies for Israel's Mossad in the latest episode of the long-running covert conflict between the two countries. The judiciary's official news agency, Mizan, confirmed on Today that Bahman Shubiasel was hanged following a final ruling by the Supreme Court. Shubiasel, who was reportedly involved in sensitive telecommunications projects, was convicted of corruption on earth, a charge frequently used in espionage and national security cases in Iran. The judiciary claimed that he was recruited by the Israeli intelligence service to breach Iranian data centers and obtain government databases alongside tracking imports of sensitive electronic equipment. According to Iranian reports, Mossad's primary objective in recruiting Shubiasel was to obtain the database of governmental institutions and create a breach in Iranian data centers. It's unclear when Shubiasel was arrested or how long he had been in custody before his execution. This execution marks the 10th such case since Israeli airstrikes in June, targeting Iran's nuclear and military infrastructure. The unprovoked attack killed more than 1,100 Iranians, according to Amnesty International, including top generals, nuclear scientists, and civilians. Iran responded with missile and drone barrages, some of which struck Israeli territory. Israel has not commented publicly on Shubiasel's execution. However, Tel Aviv has previously acknowledged conducting covert operations deep inside Iran and assassinating nuclear scientists and military commanders, usually with the support of Mossad operatives.
A powerful car bomb blast outside the headquarters of Pakistan's paramilitary frontier corps in the southwestern city of Quetta has killed at least 10 people and wounded more than 30 others, authorities said. The explosion, swiftly followed by heavy gunfire, tore through the vicinity of Zarghun Road in Quetta, capital of Balochistan province, earlier today. 2 law enforcement personnel were killed, while the rest of the dead were civilians, Bakht Mohammad Kakar, the provincial health minister, told Al Jazeera. A security camera video posted on social media showed a vehicle turning towards the regional headquarters of the Frontier Corps and exploding within seconds. Balochistan's chief minister, Mir Sarfraz Bukhti, condemned the incident, labeling it a terrorist attack. Speaking after the blast, Bukhti confirmed that at least 4 attackers were killed by the security personnel. Pakistan's President Asif Ali Zardari issued a strong condemnation over the attack, saying, the misguided extremists were acting on India's agenda. He did not give details. India has not yet responded to the allegation. No group has claimed responsibility for the bombing.
UK Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy on Monday, September 29th, condemned Nigel Farage's Reform UK policies as racist at the Labour Party's annual conference in Liverpool. Farage last week said his party would make it harder for foreign nationals to move to Britain if it wins the next election, tailoring the system to higher earners with strong English, with the aim of reducing the number of migrants. Under the plans, Reform would scrap the current indefinite leave to remain status, which migrants can claim after 5 years, and replace it with a 5-year renewable work visa, which would prevent holders from accessing welfare benefits. Responding to the Reform threat, the government is already trying to make it harder for migrants to stay in the country and has said it will launch a consultation on making people wait 10 years to apply for ILR, instead of the current 5 years. Reform UK has just 5 lawmakers in the 650-strong British Parliament, but leads opinion polls, with 28% of people saying they would vote for the party, a lead of 8 points over the governing Labour Party. The next election is expected in 2029. In the year to March 2025, Britain granted leave to remain to 173,000 people, a 33% rise on the previous year.
When you see Nigel Farage measuring the curtains of Downing Street, look around the world. In Australia, Labour trailed by 10 points until they won. In Canada, the Liberals 20 points behind until they won. In Norway, just a few weeks ago, Labour 16 points behind until they won. The lesson is clear. Progressives win when they follow the North Star of our values and the guardrails of our realism.
Ukraine could strike deeper into Russia if the United States provides it with Tomahawk cruise missiles. That comes after U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said Sunday that the U.S. is considering Kiev's request for the long-range weapons to counter Russia. Damian Murphy, a senior vice president at the Center for American Progress, says the message is clear.
I think President Trump has made clear that he's frustrated with Putin, and perhaps this indication that they're willing to provide Tomahawk missiles, shows that the frustration has reached a boiling point, and they're ready to balance out the U.S. approach to the conflict and provide Ukraine with these weapons.
So why does Ukraine want these missiles now? Tomahawk missiles are long-range, precision-guided weapons typically launched from ships or submarines. They can hit targets up to 1,000 miles away, even in areas with strong air defenses. They would put Russian bases, supply hubs, airfields, and command posts within range. And Moscow warned on Monday that this would escalate the conflict. Tomahawk missiles are made by Raytheon, a division of U.S. defense and aerospace giant RTX. The U.S. plans to purchase 57 in 2026, with each costing about $1.3 million. The Pentagon is also investing in upgrades to improve the missiles' guidance systems. Such costs mean the weapons aren't cheap to buy or use. Ukraine already has a variety of long-range missiles, both homemade and supplied by Western allies. Imported weapons include the European Storm Shadow cruise missile with a range of around 155 miles. Ukraine also has the US-made Army Tactical Missile System, a ground-launched ballistic missile that can hit targets up to 190 miles away. Tomahawks, with their long-range and precision guidance, would exceed the capabilities of all these weapons. Dalibor Rohak from the American Enterprise Institute says that's why Washington is still mulling whether to supply them.
If the US were indeed to supply Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles, whether or not mediated through and financed by Europeans, that would be a new development, and I think that would be a major shift in policy. What we've heard from the Vice President, though, is that It's something that the United States is contemplating, and I think we'll have to, see what the decision when it's being made.
Tomahawks have been proven effective in many operations, including recent strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen. Now, they could unlock Ukraine's potential to strike vital targets, potentially altering the conflict. Both sides will be watching Washington's decision very carefully.
The suspect who crashed his truck into a Michigan Mormon church, opening fire and setting the church ablaze, did it as an act of targeted violence, with evidence suggesting religious hatred. That was according to officials on Monday. Thomas Jacob Sanford, a 40-year-old man from the nearby town of Burton, was shot dead in a parking lot outside the building about 8 minutes after the carnage began. At a news conference on Monday, officials would only offer sparse details on the shooter's background.
The suspect from yesterday has been arrested by law enforcement in the past.
Township Police Chief William Renier said Sanford had been arrested for burglary and operating while intoxicated, but did not elaborate further. US military records show Sanford was an Iraq War veteran who served in the Marine Corps from 2004 to 2008.
I spoke with President Trump yesterday, who wanted to share his condolences.
Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer warned against rushing to interpret Sanford's motives, emphasizing the importance of allowing investigators to do their work.
But I want to caution everyone, while we are working hard, while the good men and women who are working hard are doing so with due diligence at this juncture, speculation is unhelpful and it can be downright dangerous. So just ask that people lower the temperature of rhetoric. Keep your loved ones close and keep this community close to your hearts.
In a TV interview, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the FBI had evidence pointing to Sanford having a hatred of Mormons. The New York Times cited friends of Sanford, saying the animosity stemmed from a long-ago breakup with a girlfriend who was in the faith. Sunday's assault marked the 324th mass shooting in the US in 2025, according to the Gun Violence Archive, which tracks shootings in which 4 or more people are shot or killed, not including the shooter.
Indonesian rescuers were scrambling earlier today to locate 38 people feared trapped under rubble after an Islamic boarding school collapsed in the province of East Java, while dozens were at afternoon prayer, disaster mitigation authorities said. 1 person was killed and 102 evacuated in Monday's incident at the Al-Khuzini school in the town of Sidoarjo when the unstable building collapsed during construction, the disaster mitigation agency said in a statement. A bulldozer was among the heavy equipment he said searchers were using to shift the rubble, while nearly 80 injured were taken to hospital. Video images from news channel Compass TV showed families of students clustered around a whiteboard looking at a list of evacuees. The agency said the building's foundations allegedly could not support the weight of construction on its 4th floor.
Madagascar President Andry Rajoelina said on Monday he was dissolving the government following deadly youth-led protests over water and power cuts. Maybe we haven't met the needs you aspired to, or even listened to the cries and fears you experienced, he said in a speech on state broadcaster TVN. The United Nations says more than 20 people have been killed and more than 100 injured in 3 days of demonstrations, the largest the Indian Ocean island has seen in years. Police fired tear gas to disperse crowds on Monday after authorities declared a dusk-to-dawn curfew last week. Rajoelina said he wanted to communicate with young people and promised measures to support businesses affected by looting. Inspired by the so-called Gen Z protests in Kenya and Nepal, the demonstrations are the most serious challenge Rajoelina has faced since his re-election in 2023. Madagascar is mired in poverty, and many blame Rajoelina for not improving conditions. He first came to power in a 2009 coup. Before stepping down in 2014, he became president again after winning an election in 2018. He secured a 3rd term in a December 2023 poll that his challenger said was marred by irregularities.